Hi, everyone. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Danya Williams. Hi, everybody. How are you today? I did it. We got it right.
High five.
Yes, high five.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this next hour. Thank you for sharing part of your Sunday with us.
Yes, we are excited today. Today is going to be a very great show. Actually, this whole month of November is going to be an awesome show because this month of November we're going to be doing lineage societies. Um, And we're kicking it off with the sons and daughters of the United States Middle Passage. And the president of the sons and daughters is Miss Evelyn McDowell. So before I bring her on, let me just tell you who she is. Dr. Evelyn McDowell, a PhD, CPA. She is a CGMA, is the president of the board of directors, founder, and charter member of Sons and Daughters of the United States Middle Passage. She has been researching her family for over 20 years and has identified over 35 enslaved ancestors. She is a member of the Princeton chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. She is also an associate professor of accounting at Rider University in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, and is the co-chair of Rider's Task Force on its history of slavery. So please, everyone, welcome Dr. Evelyn McDowell.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here finally.
Yes, I'm so
It,
glad.
it's such an honor. Before I start, I want to give a big hello to all the members of Sons and Daughters out there, and we thank you. They love your show, and many of them love your show. And I also want to congratulate you too before I forget for getting that Ida B. Wells Award. That's a very high service award in our organization, and we are just honored to give that to you. I just want to congratulate you both.
Thank you so much. I can't even describe how much that just made our year to
Can
be
I,
able to receive that.
can I just say
Awesome.
that it brought tears to my eyes because I was actually like talking with my cousin Yolanda on the phone when I got the email, and when I read the email, I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. And I read it to her. She started screaming and she was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of y'all. And it
Yay.
was just it was really an honor, and it sits on my dresser. The
Awesome.
award itself sits on my dresser, and it means the world to me. So I
Awesome.
definitely thank you so much.
It really is a highlight for all of us. It means a lot to us to be able to hear you say that because that's what we want. We want you to feel empowered. We want you to feel appreciated. And we want you to feel love. So mission accomplished.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, mission definitely accomplished. Definitely.
Which the whole kind of feeling about being recognized and lifted up, that's a very core principle of your organization, and that's a perfect segue. So for the audience members who are unfamiliar, don't know anything about the organization, can you just tell us a bit about who started it, when it started, and the kind of reasons for starting it?
Ooh, that's a lot. Okay, well, here we go. It was started a while ago. I would say, probably the first ideas popped into my head around 2011, but we started it around 2013 is when the organization started. Um, why did it start? Well, honestly, I was at this particular time in my life, I was doing more research in my family tree and discovered that I had, an ancestor. Of course, I knew it, but I never knew the name of my enslaved ancestor. So I was working on that, and I was in I was asked to do a speech, and the speech was about how I grew up in the ghettos of Cleveland, Ohio, and how I made it to be have a PhD in accounting. And then I mentioned in the room that my ancestor was enslaved, and in the whole room, like this whole energy, So I realized I can't start my story when I was born. That my story really started years and thousands of years ago. Really, I don't know the whole story,
Mm,
but when you look at my ancestor, my great grandmother. was born enslaved, and it took all these years for a descendant of hers to get a PhD. So it really got to me. So I said, we need to do this. All of us should, if you can, find your enslaved ancestor and lift them up, because maybe you'll get the same energy that I got. And I was looking at the Daughters of America. I was looking at the show, and the show talked about the Daughters of American Revolution. And I had no idea, y'all, what it was. I had no idea what that organization was.
So our
And
show introduced you to the daughters?
no, I was looking at another show. I was looking,
Oh,
actually, Who Do You Think You Are?
okay.
And they mentioned it this is back in 2011, somewhere around there. I had no idea who they were. And I said, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I want to do for our enslaved ancestors. Exactly. So I call myself, spying on them. So I go down to New York, to DC, Washington, DC, and I just went down there specifically to see what the Daughters of American Revolution was all about. A long story short, when I get there, I find out that I could join it, and I could link. And my ancestor was unattached. So he was a Revolutionary War soldier, but no one had attached to them so that they could join the organization. So that meant I had to learn it all on my own. And, and I'm an accountant and I'm a hobby genealogist. So I had to learn all that. And to me, I honestly believe that it was divine, that it was just supposed to be. And so I got into the organization, and I used that to model sons and daughters from. And if you see the application, it's very similar to the application for the DAR. So, but it was that's how it got started, and we've been going strong ever since.
That's awesome. Very quickly, you guys, I'm drinking tea because I'm not feeling well. So if you see the tea,
Next
I'm
two
just
of
drinking
us.
some tea. Yeah.
Drink some for me.
So we see a lot of lineage and heritage societies in in the United States of America. So, I mean, particularly you have things like the Jamestown Society that celebrates the early founders of Jamestown. Then you have the Society of Ancient Planters, which kind of honors the rich and the powerful and the good of Virginia. So you have a lot of kind of very white focused ones. You've got the Daughters of the Confederacy. I mean, there are literally so many of them.
Yeah.
Why a heritage and lineage organization for enslaved people?
For the same reasons, right? For the same
Mhm.
reasons. If you will allow me, I want to go back just one little second and
Mhm.
just say that yes, I had the idea, but this organization was molded by many people, and I want to just let you know who they are. There's Rick Murphy, LaBrenda Garrett Nelson, and Sharon Gil. What's Sharon's last name? Oh my gosh, I knew I was going to do this. McGinnis and Margot Lee Williams. They all, and of course, our founding members, which are Abasi Anneton and Catherine Puckett. They all kind of helped. So I don't want anybody to think that this is something that Evelyn came up with, and Evelyn, this is all Evelyn. No, this is a community effort. So I just want everybody to know that. But you're right. I mean, it is a lineage society. This lineage society is just like all the other ones. It was developed to honor our ancestors. Our mission is to help each other connect to our enslaved ancestors. We want to honor them. We want to commemorate their memory. And we want to educate other people, because we don't want anybody to ever forget the horrible atrocities that they endured through slavery in the United States. So we started the organization to do that, and it's like any other hereditary organization. You want to lift up our ancestors. To us, our ancestors, this country wouldn't exist without them. it would not, and you all know that. I'm preaching to the choir here. Um, they would not exist. This country wouldn't exist. The founding fathers would not have been able to spend money to create this country because, but where did they get that money? A lot of that money from, a lot of them were planters, and they got that money from enslaving our ancestors. So we like to think of them as, we call them forced American heroes because of that. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. None of us would be here. So that's my take on why heritage organizations are important. And another big reason why they're important, especially in sons and daughters, and Rick Murphy has another society that he's starting up, and these, what they do is help people to focus on that history. At one time I was talking to a librarian in the Virginia, in the Library of Virginia, and he told me something fascinating. He said, I told him, I said, I feel like we don't know anything about slavery. He said, you're right. He said, to me, it's like, the history of slavery is an iceberg. And he said, Evelyn, we only know snowflakes. And I was, wow. So sons and daughters exist to help us get past all those snowflakes. We want to make a dent in that iceberg so that we can tell the stories of our ancestors and let other people know how important they were to the founding of this country. I like to think of them as founding mothers and fathers. Absolutely. That's the way I look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let me ask a question. As an employee at the DAR, one of the things that the Daughters of the American Revolution, the daughters, they are very big on trying to let people know more about the Patriots. What is it that the sons and daughters of the Middle Passage, what is it that you are trying to let people know about those forced American heroes?
Well, we just want to get their stories out. There's so many misconceptions, right?
Mm, mm,
People, yeah, there's so many misconceptions. People think it happened yesterday. I mean, not yesterday, years and years ago, like they're
mm,
ancient people. They were just like you and I.
right.
I was just telling someone the other day, I was like, if somebody took my child and sold it, I would die. And our our ancestors went through that, and they went through worse, right?
Right.
And of course they had to endure the Middle Passage, and then they got here and they just were treated so poorly, just barbaric treatment. And so what our job is to get those stories out, is to encourage people to connect to their ancestor and tell the story. So much like the DAR, I look at them as doing the same thing. But we just do it for our enslaved ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Well, one question that I have, and the timing of this show is actually perfect for so many reasons. Donnie and I have been having this discussion for the last month. All of a sudden, there's been this resurgence of this, I'm going to call it lie or disinformation, that Black people cannot, descendants of enslaved people can't trace their ancestry before 1870. Now, before we get into like how the process of applying to the sons and daughters, in order to do that, you need records. So would you like to talk a little bit about this myth that we can't find records?
Absolutely. That is another myth on top of, like, that's myth number 28. I mean, like, there's so many myths about this. The records are there. The records are there. I think some people get a little hung up on the fact that you need to find a birth certificate. You need to find, a manifest. You need to find a bill of sale. You don't need to find those things. The census records are there. if in case to replace the birth records, the census records are there. You don't need to find, and thank goodness for all of us who are who are into genealogy. We know that there's a standard of proof, right? So all we need to do is, okay, you can't find an ancestor in particular. Let's say you can't find one. That evidence. You can get to 1870 census, but you can't find the evidence for whatever reason. There you could there are laws. There are law, like I believe it's in Alabama. Alabama had a law that said any free people of color had to get out, and I think it was 1833 if I'm not mistaken. And so if your ancestor was born after 1833 and you see them on the 1870 census, they were born before 1873, then that's a piece of the evidence that they were most likely enslaved. So you can kind of get like their negative evidence. You can go back to the 1850 census. You can go and they're not there. So you can, negative evidence is powerful. But you don't have to find that bill of sale. Those records are hard to come by, and I don't want people to feel like they have to do that. You can, there are other ways, deeds, wills. I found one of my enslaved ancestors on a will. And then I found other information in newspapers, that you can find the information. Even if you can't find that exact information about where they were enslaved, you can put together pieces to make the argument that they were enslaved. That's what we're looking for.
So the goal is to prove that they were enslaved, not to necessarily prove that they were connected to you. I mean, it's easier to prove that they were connected to you. The goal is to really prove that they were enslaved.
You have to do both.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to do both. You have to prove that they were enslaved. Just like in the DAR, they have to prove that their ancestor fought for the American Revolution. In this organization, you have to prove that they were enslaved, prove. The best way you can. I would say about 98% of the applications we get approved. So I want everybody to know that, we're not, like I said, we're not looking for that bill of sale that like, boom, that person was definitely enslaved. They hear their name and the plantation and the slave owner and all that. No, but we want you to get close. Now, you want to know why? Some people ask me this. Why? Why do we have to get close? Well, I have to give this to Rick Murphy. So even when I wanted to join this organization, Rick Murphy at the time was the registrar. And many of your listeners know who he is. He was the vice president of history for AUGS, and he's very well known in the genealogy circles. And he was the registrar at the time. And I was like, okay, I got to 1870. It's Alabama. Okay, that should be enough. Okay, but he said, no, push, go more. Try to find more. And I am so happy he did, because I was able to find a deed. A will with my ancestor on it, and I could see her name. She was 8 years old. And I'll never forget the feeling that I had when I saw her. And even though it was kind of painful, on the other side of it was victory. And I'm so happy that I found it. I'm very happy I found it. So we try to push people to find the data, find the information if you can. And if you can't, do the proof argument.
Cool. And another record set that I can give a huge shout out to they're called hiring out contracts.
Oh, yeah.
So again, a lot of enslaving families, to make some extra money as an income stream, would hire out their enslaved people.
Right.
And it took me a little while to figure out where you can find them. And I'm finding them mostly in probate records. So, if you're looking in a data set or a database, want to find these kind of records, it's the probate records you really need to look at.
Yeah.
And the reason why they're really amazing is family groups were sometimes hired out. So when I'm looking at a probate record, I'm set an entire estate inventory, but those relationships aren't necessarily spelt out. To find a hiring out contract that said Joe, his wife Betsy, and their children, Joe Jr., Venus, and Sophia. There you go. And then you can actually map those people to the estate inventory, and then, depending on what time period we're talking about, the 1850 slave schedule or the 1860 slave schedule. It's just those little missing pieces of the puzzle.
Right.
But it frustrates Donnie and I to no end every time we keep hearing that statement. Nope, get to 1870, can't go beyond that.
No, that's not true.
And we've just had a wonderful conversation about how that's not true.
Right.
So we're getting a couple of questions coming in already. The most obvious one.
Most obvious.
So we're saying this. The process is similar to the Daughters of the American Revolution, but what is the overall kind of process like, and what kind of evidence do people have to gather to prove their lineage?
Okay, I like to tell people you want to think about a pedigree chart. Think about a pedigree chart, and on a pedigree chart, you want to follow that line for your enslaved ancestor. And every date, every place, every name, and every connection to the next generation has to be documented. Okay. So, like if my son wanted to prove that, I'm his mother, he can get the birth certificate, right? And that has my name, it has where I was born, it has where he was born, and has his name, and we have that connection. I'm his mother. So you want to do that for every single ancestor until you get to that enslaved ancestor. And that's basically how you do it. I mean, it sounds simple. The rub is it can get, I find that some people get intimidated by the process. And it could be because you have to get documentation to support every number. So our registrars, LaBrenda's our registrar, and Margot Lee Williams, LaBrenda Garrett Nelson, they're the registrars right now. And they actually get the application, and then they match up those dates and the places and the connections and the names to each one, and they verify that the information is there. And then once they verify it, then it goes to our board. Some people say, "Hey, Evelyn, you sure? Can you get me in?" Jokingly, "Can you get me in?" Nope, I can't get you in. I couldn't get myself in. Remember I told you? I can't get you in. It has to go to the registrars, and then the registrars are the ones that make sure that they go through the paperwork and they approve, and then we get it, and then we approve, and then that person is added to the roster. We print out certificates. We are all, matter of fact, I just want to let everybody know we are 100% volunteer organization. Not like the DAR. They make good money, right? Everybody. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. So we are 100% volunteer. So the process goes after they've been approved for membership. We print out the certificates, and we do them in batches, which is, some people, we do it like every 3 or 6 months. We'll print them all out at one time, and then we'll send them out. And that's how it goes. And then you're in the organization. We are just happy that we have just got our insignia. It's going to be, you can buy it from Hamilton Jewelers. They're getting it made right now, so we're really excited about that.
Oh.
And this is, I have an old one on right now, but it's very exciting, very exciting. You can have your ancestor on it, like I said, it's very exciting. So that's basically the process. Now, can I answer a question that everybody asked me at this time?
Yeah.
Actually, there's a very good question from Pamela McDonald, which I hope that, Don, you can throw that one up. So how do you document enslaved ancestors who aren't registered by name?
Who aren't registered by name?
if I
Well,
understand what she's saying, because they're not going to have a birth certificate, they're not going to have a death certificate. So how do you say, for instance, you have gotten past the 1870, you're now in the early 1800s, you're working with estate inventories and probate records and freedmen, obviously after emancipation, freedmen records. How do you document those people who didn't have birth or death certificates?
okay. Well, and I could give you just a quick example about my second great grandmother. This is the one that I found on a will. um, I was able to find her on the 1870 census. So I don't know if this person is able to find him on the her in 1870. So I found her in the 1870 census, and her last name I know it. The what's his name? The guy who did the study on the last name of enslaved people. I have found that a lot of my ancestors took the name of the enslaver. So in this particular case, I was able to find her on the 1870 census, and there was her birth date and everything right there. So I'm going to try to keep going back as far as I can. Of course, I want to go back to Africa, but I have not gotten to a point where I couldn't find any data that would help me figure out ages. So again, it's like a big puzzle, and I'm putting pieces together. So I don't know if that answers the question, but in that particular case, that's how I was able to do it. Even though they don't have a birth certificate, and she doesn't even have a death certificate. I have no idea when she died.
Well,
So
I think most of the enslaved wouldn't have like a birth or a death certificate.
yes.
I mean, take Moses and Martha, none of them will have that, but if we have proof proof of them connected to us in one way or another, we end up finding them, and
Hmm.
that'll be proof of them. I have a
Absolutely.
question
Mhm.
from
Well, I
Jody.
just want to jump in before we cycle off this point. However, if I don't want to say lucky, but depending on the practices of the enslaving family,
Yeah.
their births or deaths may be noted in a plantation book, a
Yes.
farm book,
Yep.
farm journal, whatever they call them.
Yep.
You may be able to, if they still survive and exist, you might be able to find them there. And sometimes in enslaving family Bibles, they will have a page called, specifically for their colored family members. As shocking as that might seem, that they would actually document that, you might be able to find that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you all, I mean, I don't know, who knows, right? But I wonder, like, are those documents rare? I mean, I think, like some of those documents may be hard to get because, a lot of those records didn't survive, but it's okay because a lot of, like, a will deeds, they survive. And our ancestors were unfortunately considered property. And so a lot of those records, they exist, but do they exist today? I don't know. But it is, like I said, it's still possible to go back and find those enslaved people. And even though they're not listed by name, like on the will, for example, for my ancestor, on that particular will, I was able to find other names there
Mm,
on
yeah,
the will.
yeah.
And I suspect that some of them maybe her relatives. I think of another applicant, for example. They I also found their ancestor on a will. They found the ancestor on a will, and on that will said their mother, the mother so and so, the daughter, and the whole family was listed.
Yeah.
And again, and they may or may not be on any census, but we were able to find them. And and the census is problematic, right? Because we do know that not everybody was included on the 1870 census. That they estimate that large number of enslaved people didn't make it on there. But we can go to the 1880.
Mhm.
Not no 18. One of them is missing. Um,
1890 is missing.
1890. Okay, we can
That's
go
the
to,
one that's missing. The
yes. Okay.
1880 is around.
Okay, you can go to the 1880 and perhaps find people on there.
Mhm.
Um, you know, we want to be able to find them all, and that's another thing that the heritage these heritage organizations are all about, is collecting this information and creating a database. We don't share any information past 100 years, okay? So we want to create a database so everybody else who's trying to connect to their ancestor can maybe go to our websites, our database, just like the DAR, and put information in, and be able to find an application. So that's another thing that we're hoping to be able to do.
Mhm. I'm going to quickly answer DG's question. She has a question about birth certificates, or he. I'm sorry, I don't know the gender. But DG, you will need to research when the state that your ancestors were living in mandated birth certificates and death certificates. Birth certificates were late after 1900. Deaths were handled in different ways, and then you have to research the county that your ancestors lived in, because South Carolina mandated death certificates twice. The part of South Carolina that Donnie and I came from, well, our ancestors came from, they're like, no, we're not doing it. You can't make us do it. We're not doing it. So they
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 didn't
were
do them until 1915, till they were made, till they were
so they
forced.
made they were like one of the last counties to
Yep.
actually do it. So
Wow.
as much as we're researching our ancestors, we have to also research the communities and the places and the counties and the states where they
Yes,
were living. So I hope that
absolutely.
answers your question, DG.
I do want to mention too that many people may not realize that in New Jersey, for example, they did register slave births, and probably also in New York City they did, because there was this
Mhm.
gradual abolition act in both of those places, and I think in Philadelphia as well, or Pennsylvania. And in order to, they made them so that they know when their time was up. They required the slaveholder to come in and register the birth. And so there are some places where they did do it, but I would suspect there are not that many. Yeah.
Well, I have one person who says the application asks for the name of Jody Biles. She says it asks for the name of the slaveholders, and she doesn't know that. Can she still join?
Yeah, you can still join. You can still join. Just
Okay.
put together that, your proof argument to make us understand why you feel that this person was enslaved. So as there's another thing that some people get confused about, is even if they're on the 1870 census, that doesn't mean, or even an earlier census, that doesn't, I mean, if you see them on the 1870 census, it doesn't mean they were enslaved. Doesn't mean that, right? They could have been freed earlier, and they would be on the 1860 census or the 1850 census if you go back, maybe. And so you don't, we that's why we just don't want to just take the fact that you see them on the 1870 census as, yeah, they were enslaved. They're not necessary. Like, for example, again, I'm gonna come back to New Jersey. In 1804, they passed the Gradual Abolition Act, and they said that a woman 21 years old and a man 25 years old, they had to serve or be enslaved up until that point. So it's possible you could see them on the 1840 census, or no, or not the 1840. I think it's 1830. You could see them on the 1830 census, and you would think they've been free, but maybe they were in fact enslaved, because you can see them on the census, but they were enslaved. They just came off in age. So it's a little tricky, but it's all good, because we got to tell these stories. We got to
Mhm.
tell the stories.
Right. So I have
Now,
a
Kelly,
question. Uh, Can I ask this real quick
sure.
question?
Hmm.
Um, so you were talking about the database and everything, and trying to make it so that other people will be able to join. Moses is a huge person. Everybody knows about Brian and I, ancestor Moses Williams, and he would be a great person for people to join under. You
Mhm.
want me to join under Moses? You've made that and even though I can join under Moses. but I want to make sure that I'm going the right direction. So
Mhm.
if I join under Moses, my direction would be through, of course, my mom and from my mother to my mother's grandmother. But
Mhm.
I have several paths because he had so many children, and my mom can go under either one of his wives.
Wow.
What is the should I go the easiest route so that it can put him on there, or should I go the hardest route so that then other people can then join?
Go
Because I mean, there are
easy.
two
Go
ways.
go easy. I would say go easy. And I mean, if you want to do the hard route, of course we appreciate that. But you know, sometimes it's just so the process can be daunting, you know. And I don't want that to hold you up. We need you. We need we need the members, our members help us run the organization. And
Okay.
we need people to help us. So I want you in, and I'm being selfish in the
Okay.
discussion.
Well, we can also work that out because you can go under one wife and I can go under the other.
Yeah, there you
Well,
go.
you can join more under more than one
Yes,
person too, right?
Well,
yes.
that brings up the next question from Kelly Hawkins.
Mhm.
So she's asking, when you submit an application, is it better to include one person or is it okay to include multiple lines?
Right now, we're laying out the instructions for people to do that on the single line, because what we want to do is encourage you to go as far back as possible. So, like for example, that one application I was telling you about, where they found their ancestor with their family, and it was the daughter that they found, but the mother and a sister were listed. So we would encourage that person, and that's what they did, to go back to the mother. But now, because we see the mother now, so the mother and the daughter were enslaved. So we're laying down the instructions so that you can like put an asterisk by that person, by the daughter, to let us know there's a supplement. And then and then at that particular time we'll be able to get them all in at the same time. So right now I will still go back as far as I can, and get those, and keep those individuals on the supplement. So that's what we call them, supplements. And it's $20 for the supplements. 20 The application fee. Am I getting ahead? The application fee is just $65. Just 65. And so and then the annual application or membership fee is just 25. So you could do the supplement at that same time, so it'll be $65. You indicate that that person is also enslaved, and you provide, actually what you'd have to do is add additional documentation. You just have to fill out the application, the first 4 pages of the application again, and it's just so we can get all of that data. Because on the second page of the application, we want to know who that enslaved person married and if they had children, because all of that information will help another person connect to that enslaved ancestor. So we want that information. So you'd have to do just the first 4 pages, because all the documentation would have been in the application with the mother on it, for example.
And Joyce Haney, wow, that is such a South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia surname. She had a question, did all slaves register with the Freedman Bureau? And I'm going to do the first part of that one. The quick answer is no.
No.
You have to do some research. The Freedman Bureau kind of record set has a wonderful website. There's also a lot of information available about the Freedman Bureau records on Family Search's website.
Mhm.
So again, you have to think about where your ancestors were living. If they were living in a very rural area, chances are the Freedman Bureau didn't get much traction there. There probably isn't going to be a record. So in my own research, for another client, I'm researching in Jasper County, Georgia, Carroll County, Georgia. I just get a feeling these were like very, very rural places. There are no Freedman records there. Now, there may have been an office in a city not far from there,
Mhm.
but I haven't found. I mean, I've actually physically been looking for them, and I can't find them. So again, it takes a little bit of research to figure out if there was a Freedmen Bureau office anywhere near where your enslaved ancestors were living, and just do a little look to see if there were any enslaved people who were registering their marriages, who were registering their labor contracts.
Cohabitation records. There's
Yes.
so many records. And that's the other thing. We're talking about records that we may know about, but there are probably thousands and thousands of records that we don't know about. They're somewhere in a box somewhere, you just and we just don't know about them yet.
Mhm. I'm going to ask this, but to the pair of you, Rhonda Barlow asked the question, not to sound like this question is going to sound, but this is a real question. Isn't every Black person whose ancestors were here from the 1800s descended from a slave?
No. I say no.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I don't know. because even in I would say most people are. I would say most, but there are people from the islands, or from another nation, like and just here from Africa. So if they have, I've found people on the 1860 census that came here from another country, and they came from another country. So, but were they enslaved? I don't know. That's why we have to get these stories out here. We have to. At one point, I would have said no. I mean, yes, everybody that had ancestors here before the 1800s or even before 1870, I would have said that. But more I dig into it, I'm like you, Danya. They're I don't know for sure, but I feel that
Well,
they
I feel like this. I feel like this. Um, at first I said no, but let me rephrase it, because even white people were considered indentured servants, and if a child came from an indentured servant, a black child came from an indentured servant, is that child considered um from someone who was quote unquote enslaved, whether it was enslaved as an indentured servant
Mm-mm.
or enslaved? Right. See,
Not,
everybody has their
not,
own.
not if they had a white mother.
Yeah, right. That's my
Remember,
thought. So
it always took the status of what the mother was.
exactly. I understand that. That's
Mm.
what I'm saying. I
Hmm.
understand that part. So you have to think about what that is. But some people may look at as indentured servitude as a form of slavery.
and we do.
That's the problem that people
Mhm,
are having. They
mhm,
look at indentured servitude as a form of slavery. So
it is.
because they look at it as an in form of slavery, then they'll say that yes, these people were enslaved.
Yeah.
I don't feel like they were.
Um,
I'm on the same boat
yeah.
as Brian when it comes to that. But then we have family members who, a woman, for example, Rebecca Bug, her mother was not even an indentured servant. Her mother was just a regular old sweet white woman. That's what they called her. A Christian white woman
Mhm,
who had black children.
yeah.
And Rebecca was a free person of color,
Right.
point blank. That's all
Now,
she was. So they exist. They are free people of color. I hate the fact that we don't talk about them enough.
Yes. Yeah.
mm,
I agree.
now where things get a little bit tricky, and there's still academic debate raging, what the legal status of the 1619 Africans were.
Right.
Um, because I do descend from some of those lines, and what they bought themselves out of their bonds. They were free, except for poor Peter George. He was the only one who never got his freedom. All the other ones did. And they just continued to more or less marry from the same families. So technically, they weren't slaves the way that we think of enslaved people. So they were free, and we don't really know enough about the first African descended people who were in New Sweden and New Amsterdam.
Mhm.
There was slavery there, but I don't know what form it took. It seems that I don't know what form it took. I'm not even going to just carry on at that point. But those are two non-British colonies that are probably the least discussed, least researched, and they were very multicultural. I mean, they had African people, Asian people, just people from all over the place.
Wow. Can I throw a little more confusion in the mix?
Oh,
So
sure.
Sure.
back in, so
That's how it works.
Back in New Jersey again, we had we found indentured. So when they had the gradual abolition, um, they they said that these people who were freed under the Gradual Abolition Act of 1804 were free, but they had to be indentured for 21 to 25 years. Now, when I did my research, those individuals could have been sold down south and they would have lost their freedom, even though they were on the clock to get their freedom. They could, and they were given away in wills. So I feel right now I feel you say tomato, I say tomato. They were enslaved because they didn't have freedom. I mean, that's my definition. If you don't have freedom and somebody else is dictating your life, you're not
Mm.
free, and you're enslaved. So that's the way we look at it, actually. So if you had an indentured, your ancestor was an indentured servant, we count that as being enslaved.
Mm. So I want to go back real quick because I mean this show is going so fast. So I want to I want to go back because DG she actually asked a few questions since this is like modeled after the Daughters of the American Revolution, and I know how they go. She asked questions like can you use funeral programs? And most
Mm,
importantly, do the first three generations, do you have to have that information for those first three generations? So for example, at the daughters, you have to have the birth certificate, the marriage record, and a death record for that first three generation. Is
yeah,
that the same
it
for
is the same. Yes,
yeah, okay. So
and
we want to make sure everybody knows that.
mhm.
And then also funeral programs, obituaries, are those available that can we use those in order for people to join?
You can use them as part of your argument.
Okay.
Yeah, you can use them as part of your argument that they were enslaved. Most definitely, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure we get all of that out there because I want people to join. I want people to be able to be a part of it. So then the other question that I personally have is that once you join, what is it that the members are going to do once in the organization?
Okay, so every year we have an annual conference.
Mhm.
The members, through their donations, and donations and membership fees, that's how we could put those members. We put those conferences on. We are able to, they who we provide a place for people to do or to talk about their ancestors, to talk about their stories at those conferences. We are trying to encourage more people, although not many people have taken us up on it. We have tried to encourage more people to do different things, like we have someone who's does voiceover, and they're reading the narratives. Put that on our site. Um, we have last year, for the first time, we did poster sessions. Give us your poster sessions. We provide a place for you to tell your story.
Mm.
um, we're working towards having a journal where people can write up bios of all of their ancestors and put that in there. So the members support the activities of the organization. We also have gone to different events. So I have a member who set up a booth in Mississippi at a blues festival for the organization, and so they would go and you could do that. I mean, we want you to use your talents to uplift our ancestors in the way that you feel comfortable doing, you know. And we want to provide a place for you to do that. We also make donations to organizations who align with our mission. And what else do we do? We have
Or don't you
we have
do
a lot of,
educational?
mhm.
Don't you do educational outreach?
Yeah, we do educational outreach.
Hmm.
We have at our meetings, we have a big conference where all our members become
Hmm.
are there. We again with our insignia, we want people to uplift your ancestors, and we also try to be a family, because I feel when we're all done with all our connections, we all gonna be cousins.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if you can answer this in about 3 minutes.
Yes,
What, when would you file a supplemental application, and when do you have to file a full one?
you have to file the full one first,
Right.
and then you can file supplementals. As many. I found 35 enslaved ancestors. I'm going to have 35 supplementals. And on our insignia, you can have, just like DAR, you can have a ribbon that will support all of your names of your enslaved ancestors. So that's what we're going for. We want all of them. There were 4 million enslaved people on the 1870 census, and there are estimates of 10 million people were enslaved. My goal, if I would love it, if we had the names of all 10
All 10
million.
million.
Mhm.
So basically what she's saying is, if I was to fill out my thing under Moses Williams, and then I have another one for Martha Brooks, Martha would be my supplemental. But I started out with Moses. Martha is my supplemental. Who else would be my supplemental? Brian, because we have Peter would be a supplemental.
Yeah.
Mm,
Peter
Jane.
Peterson, Jane Williams
Jane
would
would
be,
be.
she would be a
Mhm.
supplemental. So I have about that I know about 7 of enslaved people that I could join under.
Yes.
Moses Jr. would be a supplemental. Violet would be a supplemental. Mind you, these are
Mhm.
all Moses's people.
Yeah.
So I guess to I guess make it really, really simplified,
Yeah.
you would have to do the full process for Moses because he's not already registered with the
Exactly.
sons and daughter. But
Exactly.
anyone associated with him that would be additional to him, a
Mhm.
descendant of his, would be a
Right.
supplemental. Because
And-
really, the heavy lifting would have already been done.
Right.
exactly. And don't forget about record copies. So when you join, and you need to, if you want to use that ancestor for a supplemental, you could just say, hey, see record copy. That's what we do. You can use record copies from other organizations as well to join the organization. And once you do all the work, you don't have to do it anymore. So you're right. Definitely.
That's awesome. Well,
Mhm.
you know what? This went way too fast.
It did.
Way too fast. And we got the cost out there, and I'm so excited about all of that. Thank you so much for getting it out there. The cost is $65. The website is going across the bottom. You guys see that. It's $65 to join, and what's the $20 for?
The $20 is the supplemental fee application.
So
Supplemental.
once you've joined once, you just
Hmm.
paying $20 after that
Hmm.
for each additional
Each
one,
additional.
which is awesome.
And if your
Um,
children want to join, all they have to do is send your record copy.
awesome. See how that
Mhm.
goes, guys. This is awesome.
So we kind of have a quick DNA related question.
Uh-oh.
I'm not gonna
DNA.
read it out. I'm not gonna read it out. Um, you don't DNA is not submitted. You don't know what ethnicity people who are applying under are from. All you're interested in, you can prove that you're descended from an enslaved person. Here's their records.
Mhm.
There you go. So you don't have any ethnic information.
on on the no, they have to be you have to be descendant from an it has to
Mhm.
be African descent. Yes.
Yep,
They have to be
got it.
African descent. Yes.
And the name of the organization is Sons and Daughters of the U.S. Middle Passage. Someone asked to definitely say that again. So
Please
thank you.
join us.
Yes, please join. I'm actually gonna drop mine. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna drop mine probably next weekend. But I'm gonna
Oh,
drop it under
you heard her,
both
Brian.
Martha. Yeah, I'm gonna drop mine probably under both Martha and Moses. Cause I can do the easy. I have an easy path for both of them.
Okay,
And
awesome.
yeah, she said, but you don't have to be identified today. Okay.
Thank you for your show, you all. Thank you for what you do. We
Oh
really,
no.
everybody appreciates you. I know it. I love your shows. I love your shows. They are
Uh,
so informative. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you so much. We try. We try very hard. We try.
you.
We
So we
try.
may have time for a quick question,
Oh,
but I
okay.
just wanted to introduce next week's show because we ran out of time to introduce this one last week. So if you have ever wondered what it takes for a county or a state to digitize its records and make them publicly available, you will want to watch next week's show because we will be speaking with the Kentucky Historical Society, which is at the moment project managing and work and undertaking that very thing. So if you're curious about what the process is, handling fragile documents, um, anything you want to know about how to actually digitize stuff and make it publicly available, you will want to watch. And please, as always, bring your questions.
Yes, 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 definitely. So thank you again, Evelyn, for
Thank
being on the
you.
show.
What an honor, the privilege.
Anytime you want to be on the show, anytime you want to say something, just contact us because we're
I
ready for
will.
you guys. We're open. We're here to
Yeah.
do that.
Thank you so much for what you do.
No problem. So again, guys, thank you for joining us. I'm Danya Williams,
I'm Brian Sheffy.
and we will see you again. Enjoy this beautiful Sunday. Enjoy everything.
Enjoy. See you next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.